A new mock draft has an LSU Tiger going number 1 overall. And that's not even the most shocking part of this mock draft. It's on today's Locked on LSU. Let's go.
You are Locked on LSU, your daily podcast on the LSU Tigers. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Okay, let's get it. It is Locked on LSU, your team every day. I'm your host, Matt Moscona. Thanks for making us your first listen. We are free, available wherever you get podcasts, of course, on YouTube as well. So please subscribe. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Place your first $5 bet, and you'll get started with $200 in bonus bets guaranteed. Visit FanDuel.com to get started. Today, we have an exclusive conversation with the number 1 quarterback in the country for 2027, Elijah Haven of the Dunham School in Baton Rouge. On3, 24/7 have named him the number 1 prospect. Oh, he's a high school sophomore, so a long way to go. But this is a kid from Baton Rouge who is mighty impressive, and you'll hear an excerpt of my conversation with him coming up here shortly. Speaking of quarterbacks, we'll get to the future, but I want to talk about the present. I want to talk about Garrett Nussmeier's Heisman path through 5 games. His similarities to Jaden Daniels might floor you. It's coming up. But I don't love to talk about mock drafts here. But the mock draft I'm going to talk about today is a launching point into a bigger conversation about Garrett Nussmeier. And the reason I don't love talking about mock drafts is because, generally speaking, it's just one person's opinion. It's one person's opinion on how they scout a player, who might be picking where in the draft, what that front office may covet. And I think sometimes, and they're fun exercises, don't misunderstand me. I just don't put a lot of stock into them, who's going where, that sort of thing. But if you start to see a general consensus among draft analysts, especially ones that work for high-level organizations, usually those people are talking to the right people. Usually not only are they scouts who are grading out prospects, but generally they have well-placed sources among front office executives, coaches, agents, and they kind of have a feeling of what the scuttle is around the league about certain players. So sometimes when I start to notice a consensus about where a player might be taken in the draft, that's what maybe is a little more intriguing to me. That's why this conversation about Garrett Nussmeier has to be had now. So, in the last week, as the college football season has wrapped up its first month, you're starting to see a few mock drafts trickle out. And Garrett Nussmeier's hot start has gotten him a lot of attention. But what I saw this week absolutely floored me. Yahoo Sports put out their first mock draft here for this 2025 draft. It was Charles McDonald and Nate Tice. They did a dueling mock draft where they alternated picks. And they used the current standings in the NFL to select the order. That's inconsequential. And I mentioned there's an LSU Tiger going number 1 overall, and Nate Tice of Yahoo has Will Campbell going number 1 overall to Jacksonville. Now, I think we all understand in today's modern NFL, quarterbacks go number 1 in the draft. Now, a couple of years ago, Travon Walker, defensive end from Georgia, went number 1. The last time a tackle went number 1 was 2013. That's when Eric Fisher went number 1 overall to the Kansas City Chiefs. Since then, we've seen 3 defensive ends go number 1. Jadeveon Clowney, Myles Garrett, and Walker. The other 8, all quarterbacks. And we know that. Generally, teams draft quarterbacks high in the draft because it's the most important position in team sports. We know that. You can't win without an elite quarterback, so teams take a shot. And sometimes you hit, and sometimes you're the Chicago Bears. And you've drafted Mitchell Trubisky and Justin Fields and now Caleb Williams, and you just keep trying to hit on one because you know you can't win at a high level until you do. So some of that's luck of the draw. Also depends on who's picking. For example, if Jacksonville does have the number 1 pick in the draft, which I don't suspect they will, but if they do, they're clearly not going to take a quarterback number 1 because they have Trevor Lawrence, whom they've already paid to be their franchise quarterback. Could they trade out of that pick to a team who needs a quarterback if there's someone at the top of the draft? Absolutely. So it's worth bearing that all out. But still, to see Will Campbell at the top of the draft is mighty impressive. And the truth is there's only 3 positions that are ever going to go number 1 overall: quarterback, the guy that protects the quarterback, and the guy that affects the quarterback. So quarterback, left tackle, defensive end. That's it. You're never going to see any other position in modern football go number one overall. So that was great to see. Will Campbell, and you just hope he stays healthy, continue to have a great junior season. He's going to be a very wealthy prospect, young man coming up this spring. He's not already because of NIL. His running mate, Emory Jones, 15 overall to the Chicago Bears, potentially protecting Caleb Williams. And then Harold Perkins, interesting conversation considering the knee injury and also where Perkins fits. But they have Harold Perkins going number 30 overall to Tampa Bay. So for Saints fans, that's a bit of a bummer if that were to happen that way. But to see Perkins in round one would still be fantastic, given the way he exploded onto the college football scene, only to have the last couple of years not go the way that any of us kind of hoped that it would, for him personally or for the LSU defense. And then obviously the torn ACL is just a devastating injury. But to see Harold Perkins in round one is fantastic. And that would certainly, if that's the draft projection he starts hearing back, that would make his decision whether to stay or go much easier. But that is not the most surprising part of this mock draft. The most surprising part of this mock draft is that they have Garrett Nussmeier going 10th overall to the New York Giants. How about that? Shadur Sanders, the first quarterback off the board at 5. Cam Ward of Miami, the second quarterback off the board at 8. And then Garrett Nussmeier, the third quarterback off the board at 10. If you're wondering, Jalen Milroe of Alabama not in the first round. Carson Beck, they project as a 20s pick in round one. And if Garrett Nussmeier ends up being a projected top 10 pick in this draft, he's going to go pro and he should go pro. And I know there's a lot of LSU fans who are hoping for two things simultaneously. Number one, that Garrett Nussmeier has an awesome year this year and leads LSU to great heights, playoff and all that stuff. And then goes pro because number two, they want Bryce Underwood to start next year as a true freshman. And I would just submit this cautionary tale to you. Look at Oklahoma presently. Oklahoma was in a very similar situation. Brent Venables took that job, struggled under center. In year one, he was 6-6, lost the bowl game. They finished 6-7. They bring in Dillon Gabriel, transfer from UCF, who played a ton of football. Dillon Gabriel becomes a starter at Oklahoma, 10-win season. And this year, Dillon Gabriel is at Oregon. And he's at Oregon because Oklahoma collectively made the decision that they were moving on to Jackson Arnold, the 5-star number one quarterback from a year ago who sat behind Dillon Gabriel for a season. They were ready to commit to him as a redshirt freshman to be their guy. And so they sent Dillon Gabriel packing. Now, I know Brent Venables recently said, well, you can't make a guy stay. And the reality is, it has been an understood thing for more than a year. As a matter of fact, we had these conversations with Oklahoma beat writers back at SEC Media Days, where it has been understood for more than a year that Dillon Gabriel was going to be a one-year guy to bridge the gap until Jackson Arnold could take over. When Gabriel wanted to come back, it was Jackson Arnold's job. So now Dillon Gabriel is at Oregon, undefeated, by the way, and one of the Heisman frontrunners. Meanwhile, Jackson Arnold has already been benched. I'm not suggesting that it won't work with Bryce Underwood. I think he's a very special player, and every LSU fan should be over the moon about the possibilities of what Bryce Underwood will be in the purple and gold. I also know that Garrett Nussmeier, as a fifth-year senior leading LSU, makes LSU a national championship contender. I can't say the same about the unknown of a true freshman. Garrett Nussmeier has been so otherworldly good here to start this season that he's gone from maybe a day 3 draft prospect, if he was on teams' boards at all, to now, after 5 games, five games, being projected as a top 10 pick. Now, we've seen similar. Look, Mitchell Trubisky, who I mentioned a bit ago, started 1 year at North Carolina, became the 3rd overall pick. Daniel Jones was similar at Duke. Drake May was a 2-year starter at North Carolina, just became the number 3 overall pick. So we see it. We see players who don't have Anthony Richardson started 13 games, was a 1-year starter at Florida. And as a redshirt sophomore, went to the draft, was a top 5 pick. So it happens. Teams reach for quarterbacks based on upside and potential because you have to have a quarterback. And there's a lot to like with Garrett Nussmeier. The arm strength, the accuracy, the ability to make all the throws, the moxie, the leadership, smart, son of a coach, football IQ. He checks every box. The only thing we didn't know about Garrett Nussmeier coming into this year was, could he purge the bad decision making? And he has certainly proven that at this point. So Garrett Nussmeier may end up being a first-round pick, and if he is, he should go. But I'll remind you, Zach Mettenberger, as a fourth-year college football player, was good. As a fifth-year player, he led a prolific LSU offense that had the first SEC offense ever to have a 3,000-yard passer, 2,000-yard receivers, and a 1,000-yard rusher. Joe Burrow in 2018 as a fourth-year player went the entire month of October without a touchdown pass. Came back for his fifth year, 2019, won the Heisman, had the most prolific season in the history of college football. And then we know the story with Jaden Daniels. Started at LSU in 2022 as a fourth-year player, came back for his fifth season, won the Heisman Trophy, became the number 2 overall pick, and he's in line to be the NFL's Rookie of the Year, if not the MVP of the league, because he's in that running, albeit through 4 weeks, but he's in that conversation. If you can get Garrett Nussmeier back for a fifth year, you are immediately a national championship contender, and I do not want to hear any hemming and hawing at all about what you're going to lose on the offensive line or Kyron Lacey or Mason Taylor. You're going to lose guys offensively, no doubt. But you've recruited well enough. There's a ton of talent there, and if you have the trigger man, you're going to be good. You're going to be experienced and talented on defense next year as well. You're going to continue to see that progression. So if Garrett Nussmeier is going to be a top 10 pick, you tip your cap, you wish him well because he should go. But if that wanes at all and you're an LSU fan wondering which you should prefer the fifth-year senior to come back because the history of that is good, and the unknown surrounding a young quarterback should terrify you. So what about Garrett Nussmeier? Through 5 weeks, what's his possibility? What's his path of doing what Jaden Daniels did a year ago, exploding and winning the Heisman Trophy? I'll run through some stats that may interest you. We'll get to that next. Locked on LSU, your team every day. Today's show is brought to you by FanDuel. Hey, NFL fans, you can start the season off with a big return on FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. So when you get a hunch in the middle of the game, you can check out the latest stats, view live play-by-play, and so much more, all on the same page where you place your bets. You'll get started with $200 in bonus bets guaranteed when you place your first $5 bet. That's at FanDuel.com. So you want to go to FanDuel and look up some futures odds for Garrett Nussmeier for the Heisman Trophy. By the way, it's plus 4,000 right now. Want to take a shot on it? You can do it. And remember, right now, you can get started with $200 in bonus bets guaranteed when you place your first $5 bet. That's only at FanDuel. FanDuel.com. FanDuel.com. So Garrett Nussmeier has had a pretty spectacular start to this season. When you look across college football and the highest rated statistical quarterbacks in the NFL, in college football, talking future there in NFL. It doesn't take very long to get to Garrett Nussmeier in any of the particular stats. If you want to talk about passing yards, he's fourth. If you want to talk about passing touchdowns, Garrett Nussmeier is third. If you want to talk about completions, Garrett Nussmeier is tied with Shedeur Sanders for second in the country. We can go on and on. You want to talk about quarterback rating? Garrett Nussmeier is... Sorry, I lost that number. My apologies. But he's really good there as well. I'm sorry, I just lost the number. The bottom line is, no matter what statistic that you're looking at, Garrett Nussmeier is among the best in the country. Completion percentage, completing just under 70% of his passes. He's been awesome. So what would it take for Garrett Nussmeier to be able to make a run like Jaden Daniels to the Heisman Trophy? Well, I know Jaden Daniels a year ago won the Heisman Trophy as a quarterback of a 3-loss team. Now, that hadn't happened since RG3 did the same thing back in 2011. And there has to be sort of a confluence of circumstances that allow that to be a reality or even a possibility, which is to say there can't be an obvious choice. In a year where Joe Burrow goes 15-0 and sets every record possible, it doesn't matter how impressive you are on a 3-loss team, you ain't winning the Heisman Trophy over that guy. So if a guy like Jalen Milroe has a 3,000-yard passing season, a 1,000-yard rushing season, like Jaden Daniels threw for 4,000 yards a year ago, and his team goes undefeated and makes the playoff, then you're probably not going to be able to unseat that guy. But if Bama loses a couple of games, like I think they will, Carson Beck just had a terrible performance against Alabama in a massive game. You could look across college football. Milrose, the current betting favorite, at plus 220, followed by Cam Ward at Miami at plus 500, tied with Travis Hunter of Colorado also at plus 500. Hard to imagine a cornerback receiver combo as great a player as Travis Hunter is. We just know those guys don't win the Heisman Trophy. Ashton Genty, the running back from Boise State, plus 1,000. As fantastic a running back as he is, he's just not going to play in enough big games to win that award. Dylan Gabriel, Nico Iamaleava of Tennessee at plus 1,800. Quinn Ewers at plus 2,000. Hard to imagine Quinn, after missing 2 games, being able to win the award. Jackson Dart, Carson Beck, Cade Klubnik, all at plus 2,000, plus 2,500. Feels like there's tremendous value there with those guys because their teams could still very much rally and make the playoff, and they could have fantastic statistical seasons and win meaningful games late. And then there's this group of plus 4,000. Garrett Nussmeier, Drew Aller, Shadur Sanders, Miller Moss, all at plus 4,000. Now, 2 things need to happen for Garrett to be in this race. Number 1 is obviously we know you got to win. You got to win, and you got to stat compile. Let me compare for you, and this may surprise you. Let me compare for you where Garrett Nussmeier is through 5 games compared to where Jaden Daniels was a year ago through 5 games. First of all, Nussmeier's team is 4-1. Jaden's team a year ago was 3-2. They lost the opener to Florida State, and then they lost to Ole Miss. Jaden Daniels a year ago at this point had thrown for 1,710 yards and 16 touchdowns. 17, 10, and 16 touchdowns. Through 5 games, Garrett Nussmeier has thrown for 1,652 yards and 15 touchdowns. Garrett Nussmeier is just 58 yards and 1 touchdown off of Jaden Daniels' passing pace of a year ago. Now, the obvious caveat that needs to be mentioned is a year ago, Jaden Daniels rushed for over 1,000 yards. So it's hard to imagine that we're going to see a world where Garrett Nussmeier, well, let's just be honest. There's no chance at all that Garrett Nussmeier even approaches Jaden Daniels' rushing total. And at this point, a year ago, Jaden Daniels had only rushed for 2 touchdowns, and his rushing totals were for 64, 29, 64, 36, and then 99 in the game against Ole Miss. That was really the game that statistically popped Jaden Daniels, even though LSU lost. Jaden threw for 414 and 4 touchdowns. He ran for 99 and another score, accounted for, 500 yards and 5 touchdowns in that game. But Garrett Nussmeier continues to chug along. There's a very real possibility that Nussmeier will approach Jaden Daniels' passing statistics this season. Jaden had a magnificent year by any standard. He threw for 3,812 yards and 40 touchdowns. Garrett Nussmeier is just off that pace, but could, with a very strong, and remember, Jaden didn't play in the bowl game. Otherwise, he certainly would have gone over 4,000 yards. But Garrett Nussmeier is trending toward approaching 4,000 yards passing. And through 5 weeks, he's got 15 touchdowns. So he is approaching those touchdown numbers as well that Jaden Daniels had. Not saying he's going to get there. I'm not saying he's going to win the Heisman. They got to win a lot more games to even have him in the conversation to be there. But statistically speaking, Garrett Nussmeier kind of on the same pace that Jaden Daniels was throwing the football a year ago. Can LSU cooperate and rack up enough wins? It'd be a huge deal. They could beat Ole Miss a week from Saturday to help boost those Heisman odds and LSU's playoff odds as well. So that's the present quarterback situation at LSU. What about the future? Elijah Haven is the number 1 quarterback in the country for the class of 2027. He's a high school sophomore out of Baton Rouge at the Dunham School, and I had a chance to sit down with Elijah Haven for a 20-minute one-on-one chat. You'll hear an excerpt of that next. Locked on LSU, your team every day. Today's show is brought to you by Game Time. Okay, y'all, if you love attending live events, I know you do if you're a sports fan, you love to be in the stadium, but it may not just be sports. Maybe it's music, theater, comedy. Wife and I went to New York earlier this year. We went over and caught a show on Broadway. It doesn't matter. I went and saw Dave Chappelle last year. No matter what you love to see live, if you have not discovered the Game Time app, man, you need to. What are you waiting on? Game Time just makes it so much easier to save on sports, concerts, comedy, theater, everything. I love the all-in pricing. I've said that before, and I mean it sincerely. We've all been there before. If you've been on a different ticketing app where you think you're paying one price, by the time you get to checkout, it's like double the price. That'll never happen with Game Time. All you have to do is toggle the feature, the all-in pricing feature, and it'll show you the total up front. So there's no surprise fees at checkout. You know how much your tickets are going to cost you, the bottom line. So check it out. Also, the panoramic seat views in the app. You get it before you buy. You get to see exactly what the view is from your seat. That's all with the Game Time app. So take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, use the code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account, redeem with the code LOCKEDONCollege. LOCKEDONCOLLEGE for $20 off. Download Game Time today. What time is it? It's game time. Had a chance on my radio show to visit with 2027 number one quarterback Elijah Haven, a guy who has 8 formal offers right now, and the number is certainly going to rise. And I'll tell you, in doing this job, being in sports media and sports radio, this is my 18th season covering LSU. I have had the opportunity to speak to many high school commits across a lot of different sports. And the ones that are fantastic conversationally are so rare that they stand out. The best I ever talked to was Russell Shepard. Colin Hurley, LSU's current freshman quarterback, is on that short list. Keelan Moses, LSU linebacker commit currently, is such an engaging young man. Elijah Haven is the most impressive 15-year-old I've ever spoken to. And I don't just mean as far as a recruit. I just mean the most impressive 15-year-old I've ever spoken to. Got to sit in studio with him. We did 20 minutes on air, visited before and after, fantastic family. Whoever lands Elijah Haven is getting not only an otherworldly talent, but a spectacular young person who anybody is going to be thrilled to have lead their program. And we're all hoping it's LSU. And I started by asking Elijah Haven if he grew up an LSU fan, being that he's from Prairieville. Did you grow up an LSU fan? Are you an LSU fan?
Yeah, I did. Yeah.
So what? Have you got to meet Brian Kelly or any of the staff yet?
I have.
Yeah,
I've talked to Coach Kelly a little bit, and then most of my talks and conversations have been with Coach Sloan.
Yeah. What have been your impressions of? And I love Joe Sloan, by the way. Just full disclosure. What have been your impressions of Joe? Coach Sloan.
Great coach. He tries to get to know my family, and me as a person, not just me as an athlete and a football player. So I definitely appreciated that from him. But he started recruiting me about last year, so we've been building a great relationship ever since. He checks up on me, wants to know how I'm doing on and off the field. So just a great coach. I would love to pray for him for one day, and looking to keep building the relationship.
Yeah. You get to go you were in Tiger Stadium a few weeks back. You were there for the UCLA game, right?
I was.
When it was about 176 degrees on the field. You were down on the field before the game. Was it as hot on the field as they said it was?
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah, it was one of those days.
Yeah, it was.
So even if you're from here, you still never quite get used to that.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like that heat was a little aggressive. But what's it like for you as a kid, like from the Baton Rouge area, to get to go down on the field and be there as a recruit?
Yeah, I guess you could say a dream come true. You grow up watching LSU and, players like Joe Burrow and Jaden Daniels, and, it's just a blessing to have an opportunity to be a recruit now, and, to be able to go see coaches like Joe Sloan and Coach Kelly, and I'm just very thankful to God and, for putting me in this position. Everything, I'm just thankful for everything he's blessed me with, really. You grow up as a little kid watching, and to be in this position now, I'm just extremely grateful.
They you got a formal offer this past week, right? I saw you tweet that. So was that? How did they do that? Did Coach Sloan call you off? How did that? How
I
did
was
that happen?
actually at because we played on Thursday at Central
Yeah.
Catholic, and I was actually at a football game, Dutchtown, and he gave me the call, and he was just telling me how proud he was. He said we did it right. We didn't rush into, him offering me or anything like that, but we built a great relationship, and he just said he was honored to offer me, and I was just, I was ecstatic.
Very cool, man. By the way, the game against St. Charles, you had a pretty significant play to win that game. For those, was it 55 yard or was it longer than that? The touchdown run?
I think it was 65.
Forgive me, I shorted him 10 yards. 65-yard touchdown run to win the game against a team that's been a perennial dome team there in St. Charles Catholic. So congrats on that. That's awesome. Have you made any other visits at this point? Like, are you even starting that process?
I have. I actually was just in Bama for the Bama-Georgia game last week, so that was just a great game to be a part of, for sure.
Yeah, man, what a wild environment that was. Like, are you building relationships already with class of 2027 guys? Like, because I would imagine now, have you started doing camps and like elite camps and stuff like that?
Yep.
So who are some of the guys that maybe you're getting to know a little bit, either from here or other?
Trent Seaborn from Alabama. He was at LSU versus UCLA, and then he was also at Bama versus Georgia. So it was, definitely one of those guys. Mark Bowen out of Bowman out of Mater Dei in LA. It was a tight end I met at Bama. Trey Taylor, he's out of, I want to say, Illinois or Michigan. He also got an offer from LSU on Friday. So definitely some guys in the 2027 class I'm starting to build some relationships with. How
many formal offers do you have right now?
8.
8 formal offers.
Yes,
Do the number's obviously going to go up a lot. It's when we talk about like you as a prospect. I mean, you're 6. How much do you weigh?
210.
So you're 6'4", 210 as a 15-year-old. So you're going to keep growing. By the way, like if doctors like project, like they can do the growth projecting. Have they told you how big they think you're going to be?
I think I'm about done.
Okay.
I should be about done.
I hope so for your mom too. She just keep buying you shoes every year. So like as a parent, like that it's like, man, you can stop growing anytime now. Like because every year I got to buy you a new wardrobe. So have you thought about like physically where you feel like you physically need development?
In terms of physically, I feel like I'm pretty good right now. Just continue to grow into my body. Continue to, in terms of football, continue to sharpen my mechanics, throwing wise. There's definitely some throws. Last week I won it back, so just continue to get better in that. But physically, I feel pretty good. 6'4", 210.
Yeah,
can't really.
No kidding, man. Right? That's what I'll ask guys that sometimes. Like I talked to Harlan Berry on the show a couple of weeks back. He was talking about that. He's one of his great assets is that his speed and his quickness. He's like, I don't want to gain too much weight and lose the speed. I get that. But when you're 6'4", 210, probably might be set there. But so you mentioned some of the throws you want back. Is that like physical development, accuracy, or is that awareness? Like what are those types of things when you said sharpening your skills?
I feel like it's like a play with, physical and mental. Obviously like reads and knowing where you're going with the football so you're able to make an accurate throw. And then physically, training and getting your mechanics so it becomes muscle memory, making those throws and, feeling it. And so like when it's time for the game, it's just really just muscle memory and natural for you.
Do you think 7-on-7 helps that?
I say a little bit. I say 7-on-7 a little bit, especially for me. I can get a little lackadaisical with my footwork, and I kind of just, with no rush, you don't really have to move in the pocket or anything. But definitely 7-on-7 definitely helps with seeing those throws and making those accurate types of throws.
That's just a small 6-minute excerpt or so from a 20-minute conversation with Elijah Haven. If you'd like to hear the entire conversation, just go to your favorite podcast app or on YouTube and search After Further Review, and you'll see the full interview there. We've got a transcription of it as well and link to the video at louisianasports.net if you'd like to check it out. But that is a guy you can rest assured that we will all be hearing plenty of and about here over these next 2 years while he finishes his high school career. Just a sophomore, but incredibly impressive physically, and maybe even more just the maturity of a 15-year-old Elijah Haven. And we'll certainly have him back. Okay, that'll do it for us here on today's episode of Locked On LSU. Thanks for making us your first listen every single day. And now for your second listen, go check out the Locked On SEC podcast. My guy, Chris Gordy, LSU alum, holds no punches, covering the best conference of college football. Find Locked On SEC on YouTube or wherever you listen to podcasts. Okay, thanks so much for being here on, if you're on podcast, please smash that or subscribe. That's YouTube. If you're on podcast, please subscribe on your favorite podcast app. Rate us, leave a review. If you're on YouTube, smash the like button, subscribe to the channel. Hit the bell so you're notified whenever we post a new video, and let a friend know. If they love the Tigers, we got you here every day for Locked On LSU, your team every day.